all these receivers, and I still have no idea who the number one is. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another video. So with the first week of OTAs behind us and the second week coming up along with the minicamp, I figured now would be a good time to look at some key positional battles that'll be happening through the offseason to keep an eye on. Now, the first position that I have that we should keep an eye on throughout the offseason is the offensive line. Left tackle is pretty much cemented with Bakhtiari as long as he does come back during week 1, which he should. And at left guard, most likely John Runyon Jr. will be taking that spot, and at center with Josh Myers. Now it becomes a question of who's going to win the starting job for the right guard and right tackle position until Jenkins comes back, to where he could play right tackle, or maybe he'll take the left guard spot. Jenkins still an unknown, but he is currently out with injury due to rehab his ACL, so we shouldn't expect him back in early of the season. So starting with the right guard position, we did end up going into the draft and drafting Sean Ryan and Zach Tom, both who can play the guard position, while also still having Royce Newman back from last year. Now, Royce Newman did play a few games last year. His play was very inconsistent. He did start getting better towards the tail end of the season, but due to his inconsistent play, he's not a lock at the right guard position, so he'll have competition from Sean Ryan and Zach Tom. Then over in the right tackle position, we do have Yash, who was a great surprise, who filled in at left tackle position for Elton Jenkins and also Bakhtiari when they went down. He performed very well against Nick Bosa. We could also see Sean Ryan and Zach Tom compete against Yash for the right tackle position, depending on how he flips over. So Yash isn't a set for the right tackle position, so there'll be a lot of different offensive line lineups as the offseason goes on, because Matt LaFleur says it's all about putting the 5 best players on the offensive line. Moving on to the next position that we should keep an eye on during the offseason is the safety position. Now, the first 2 safeties are an obvious lock in Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage, but it is that third safety position where we have a lot of question marks. Now, the third safety we had last year was Henry Black. Unfortunately, we did lose him in free agency to the New York Giants. Last year, he did play a total of almost 300 defensive snaps in that third safety position, along with rotating with Kevin King and sometimes Rasul Douglas. But he was the primary person for the third safety. So now it's going to come to who fills that spot. So some players we currently have on the roster to compete for that third spot. We do have Vernon Scott, who has had 90 career defensive snaps, but last year he was inactive for every game despite being on the 53-man roster. Then behind him we do have Ignis Gaines and also Sean Davis. Intriguing players, but they have no NFL experience. And then we also have Tariq Carpenter and Trey Sterling. Tariq Carpenter is an interesting player. He can play, he's more of an inside the box safety, so he could play linebacker or safety inside the box, so he might be able to compete and win that third spot. But as of right now, it's up for grabs, and this isn't even including if we go out into free agency to sign a third safety. On to the next position, but staying kind of within the same group, is cornerback. Now, the same thing with the safety position. The top 3 positions of cornerback are pretty much set in Jair, Rasul Douglas, and Eric Stokes. But beyond them, we have a lot of question marks as well. So the players currently on the roster to compete for that third spot, we have Shamar John Charles, Kashawn Nixon, Rico Gafford, Keandre Thomas, and Kabian Ento. So Shamar Jean Charles was a 5th round pick last year. He's only seen 38 defensive snaps, so he wasn't on the field much. Then Kashawn Nixon, he's pretty much been a special teams player. He's had a total of 274 total snaps in the past 3 seasons, but he could become an integral player on special teams. Then there's Rico Gafford. If you haven't seen, he did just switch from playing wide receiver to cornerback, which is more of his natural position, and he's been in the NFL for a few years, but he hasn't done much at all at receiver or cornerback. Then Keandre Thomas. So we have 5 players trying to compete for 3 roster spots. So the training camp battle could become a bit heated throughout the offseason, trying to compete for those 3 spots. What could help any of these players get that roster spot is if they could become a very good slot corner, as slot corner is a bit of a need for us, as we don't expect Jair Alexander to play slot throughout the entirety. He is an outside corner. He's our best corner. He's our shutdown corner. Eric Stokes and Rasul Douglas don't really play slot. They're also outside corners. Yes, they can play on slot, but they shouldn't be depended on to play slot the entire year. So it is still important that we find that guy. Moving on to the fourth position that we should look at throughout the offseason is edge rusher. Now, I know we did sign Ignabari, and it seemed like he would pretty much be filled into that edge rusher spot, but he still does have to earn the position. Also, our outside linebackers coach Jason said he would like to have 4 edge rushers on a weekly basis. And to add a little bit more to it, Green Bay typically keeps 5 outside linebackers, so expect to probably keep 5 outside linebackers this year. For the players that'll be competing for some playing time in the remaining roster spots at outside linebacker include Jonathan Garvin, Ladarius Hamilton, Kingsley Ignabari, Randy Ramsey, Kobe Jones, Chauncey Manock, and Tippa. Whoever does end up winning this position battle and playing for time will have to produce for us, because last year our third edge rusher was something to be desired for. Last year, if you can remember, when Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary are on the field, the defense is amazing. When either one or both of them came off the field, the defense suffered significantly. On top of that, they were on the field for about 2/3 of the defensive snaps, so they were getting tired. We could get a third edge rusher in there, or even 4, to produce, not at Rashawn Gary's level, of course, but get some production out of them. That'll help spell them and keep them fresh for longer, which will go a long way for our defense. And moving on to our last position battle is wide receiver, which will probably be the one that most people keep an eye on. Earlier this offseason, obviously, we did lose Davante Adams, and Davante Adams accounted for a large piece of our receiving. Last year, he had 123 catches, and that is 123 catches that are going to have to find other players now. Now, looking through our roster, there are a few players where it's an obvious lock that they're going to make the 53-man roster. Players include Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, Amari Rodgers, Christian Watson, and Romeo Doubs. I'm not putting Sammy Watkins on there yet because I haven't seen anything from him. I just know he's been working to get there. But we don't know what to fully expect from him and if the Packers want to fully take that chance on him. So with just those names and not including Sammy Watkins as a lock, that's 5 receivers that are most likely going to make the Packers receiving room. If you look towards the history of Matt LaFleur, only 2 of the 3 seasons has he only kept 6 receivers, and only 1 year has he actually had 7 receivers on the roster. So a big question that's going to come towards the end of the offseason is, are the Green Bay Packers going to keep 6, or are they actually going to have 7 wide receivers? And if we do, that means that's another position where they're going to have 1 less. So going on the assumption that the Green Bay Packers decide to keep 7 receivers, that leaves 2 roster spots for either Sammy Watkins, Samori Toure, Juwann Winfrey, or Malik Taylor. And this doesn't even include a potential free agent signing. This position is going to be the most interesting to keep an eye on, because we don't even know who our number 1 receiver is going to be, if it's going to be Christian Watson or Alan Lazard or a free agent if we go out to get one. Then it's, if we keep 6 or 7, does Sammy Watkins stay with us? Do we keep Samori Toure on the roster? Because that dude has very good route running, and I don't believe the Packers want to put him on the practice squad because another team will snatch him up. So I feel like if he continues doing well in training camp and throughout the offseason, he's going to earn his roster spot. Juwann Winfrey and Malik Taylor, they might lose their spot. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribing to the channel is always appreciated. As always, go Pack Go.